Hello, welcome to another behind the scenes video. Today we're going to look at collaboration. So I'm working with a couple of people and I want to share my composition with them so they can improve it, add to it, mess around with it. We might not be using the same DAW, the same digital audio workstation. As it happens, Reed and Alyssa, who I am working with, both use Logic. So there is a case where you could say, well, why don't you just zip up the entire Logic file and send it off? Well, there's a few problems with that because then you end up swapping quite big chunks of data between yourselves. The way that I have found it to work best in the past is to bounce out each of your tracks as an individual stem. But the key thing here is to make sure they're all exactly the same length. If I bounced out these strings, then the harp, then the flute, just as they are, they would be as long as they are. Now, the person who's receiving it would need to put these files in the correct place on the timeline to make them work together to get the same effect as me. So what I want to do is, even if there's space at the beginning and the end, I want to make sure every single file is the same length. And that's relatively easy to do. This is how I'd go about it. So Reed actually asked for this. So if you're watching this, good idea for a video. Everybody else, don't forget to like and subscribe. That's always appreciated. So if I was bouncing this out normally, let's get rid of me so I don't get in the way of anything. I would start it, I would use the cycle region to create my bounce region, and I would start it literally half a second or so before the track commences, and then to end it I would automate a fade. I'm not going to do either of those things. That's just going to make it awkward for somebody else to work with. What I'm going to do is make sure that my cycle region starts at the beginning of a bar, and I'm going to leave an entire bar free. At the end, I might do a fade out within that first bar, but what I'm going to do is extend that slightly, because if there's any reverb here, I want it to be able to ring out, because the person who's then editing the stem that I've sent them, they can automate it themselves. And that's another point. If you are automating parts of your track in terms of volume, bear in mind that the other person won't then be able to change those edits. So you may have to agree whether you are automating beforehand, before you send it to them, or afterwards. The other thing to agree on is the tempo. If somebody drags in a track and it's at the wrong tempo, then you're going to have to then start searching for what tempo they've agreed. And that brings up another point where you only want to do tempo changes on the master track that somebody is working with. So who is collating them and is eventually going to create the final track, because otherwise it then becomes complicated and you're going to have to start telling people where the tempo changes occur, but probably more likely you're going to have to send them the Logic template and hope they're using Logic. Otherwise things will become out of sync quite quickly. So I'm going to do this as a quick tip for next week, but this is just me thinking out loud and explaining why I would do it this way. So to bounce out, set your cycle region, make sure there's plenty of room for ring out at the end. Turn off any mastering. You don't want any mastering on the stereo out, which I did have there while I was listening to it. So I'm going to make sure that's off. All I want is these strings. Now, the way I prefer to do it is to mute everything except the track I want, because then it's the only one that's lit up in color. The others are all grayed out. I find that easier than soloing, just because I do. You don't need MP3s. We want a WAV. Again, you're going to agree the set bit depth and sample rate, so 24-bit 48K, and you can see the start and end has been set automatically because the cycle range is highlighted. If I had not highlighted that cycle range, it's going to try and bounce out just that track from 211 to 811. Okay, I don't want to do that. I want the cycle range on because that's my master size. So every track is going to be the same size. So you can see now it goes from 1 to 10, which is exactly what I want. WAV. Then I would give it a name. So strings, bounce that out. Let's do one more. So we'll do the harp as well. So everything is set 1 to 10. Brilliant. Click, just change the name. The reason I want 2 is to just show you how this then looks. So if we go to the folder with the bounces in now, let's go to list view. You can see both of these files are exactly the same length, and because we know they're at the same sample rate, we also know they're the same length. If I drag these in, you get the option to create new tracks or use existing tracks. I'm going to create new ones for each one. And there you go. You will hear, so I've muted everything else except the audio. There is silence at the beginning here. And then we've got the harp, which will come in and sound a bit weird. Because I moved it just for illustration purposes. But this is great because even though the harp doesn't start until here, all I have to do is line both tracks up and then the harp comes in. Now, if I'm actually working with this, I might decide, oh, actually, I'm going to chop this up and put a fade on at the beginning, and then the harp finishes by here, so I'm going to chop it there and get rid of that and fade, make sure it fades out. You know, the person who is working with that, great. Once I've finished it, if I want to send that harp back though, I would turn on the cycle range, make sure that's the only track, and I would bounce it because I'm going to get the 1 to 10 again. So the person who is now receiving it can just drag and drop it, replace the one that they did have with the one that I've updated for them. Everything fits together perfectly. I did mention making sure you know what the tempo is, because otherwise things aren't going to match. And what I'd like to do is try this because Reed has very kindly just actually done this. So we're gonna no, let's just get a new Logic project. Okay, here we go. So here's a new project. Reed has told me it's 110 BPM, the track that we're working on. And somewhere here in downloads, I have just downloaded what he's told me are the stems he's done. So, wow, looking at that, brilliant. So I can see straight away these sizes are all identical. So I'm expecting these WAVs to fit exactly together, all starting at the same place. So I'm going to literally drag them in to bar, well, let's go to bar 2, create new tracks for each one. Bosh. done. Let's zoom out a bit. How does it sound? So a bit of silence. Track starts. The way to check is go to some rhythmic part and put your metronome on. Sounds spot on to me. Saying that, I think my accent is in a slightly different place. There you go. That should be the start of the bar. My fault, it wasn't quite perfect. But let's just check that lines up. I've just realised that swapped to 6/4, 6/8. I reckon mistake by me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Apologies, hands up, Reed. It was my fault. Should have thought of that. Of course, we didn't write it in 6/8. So if we go right back to the beginning, 3, 4. Yeah, spot on. And that is sounding cool already. So nicely done, sir. That's it for the behind the scenes, what we're going to do, because I've got to crack on and have a play around with this cue. I hope you found that interesting. I'm going to turn it into a much quicker quick tip for next week, but hopefully gives you a good idea how collaboration works. And thank you again to Reed for doing a spot on job with that, and my stupidity for getting the key signature wrong. Not key signature, time signature. Blah. Right, I obviously need more coffee. Like and subscribe, always appreciated. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.